Good afternoon. Peter Towers, welcome you to the ESS BIZGRANTS webinar. We're going to feature the Business Growth Grant today. So we'll just get everything. There's some key benefits to accountants from being involved in offering grants. It's a proactive service for your clients. You're in control of the process. And it's a great entry into the business advisory services. We started developing these products because David Smith, former president of the Institute of Chartered Accountants and managing director of Smith Inc., spoke to me one night and indicated that he was receiving a lot of feedback from small, medium businesses that they were very concerned that their accountants were not keeping them informed about grants. Grants are a great way to start offering business advisory services, and we hope that you're able to really use this product in your businesses. The key benefit from a small business operator is it's their ability to obtain some financial assistance from a government department to do something in their business that they might not normally have done, because the government's going to pay approximately 50% of the cost of that project. Now, many SMEs realise they need some additional work, whether it's a business plan, a budget, some management advice, new factory layout or whatever, but in the current economic circumstances, many of them can be reluctant to do so. So the fact that you as the accountant are able to assist them to get this, it will really impress them and see and convince them that their accountant is being proactive and helping them. And when David Smith spoke to me, this was the big criticism that was coming from the SME market, that they didn't believe their accountants were being proactive enough. So the feature today was the Business Growth Grant. So let's look at it, because I think this is a very interesting grant from a small business point of view and also from an accountant's point of view, because a lot of the work that's required under the Business Growth Grant can be undertaken by accountancy businesses. So in the first instance, the applicant has to be a company. The government has some priority industries, and I'm putting them on the screen at present. Now, whether we agree or disagree with these industries, these are the industries that the government has identified as being their priority industries. Now, at first glance, you might say that's only 5 industries. Well, it's a lot more. There are hundreds of different types of business groups that fall into those categories. And also we have businesses which supply enabling technologies or services to one of those 5 prime areas. Now, this can come from freight and logistics, infrastructure related construction, that covers a lot of different things. Information communication technology, that industry is very peeved that they're not included in the priority industries, but they get a Guernsey here as long as they're working with one of those 5 priority industries, or they're contemplating working with one of the 5 industries, or professional services, but don't get excited. It's not for accountancy or legal work or medical. It's for a very restricted group of professional services involved in scientific professional services being made available. So they're the industries that relate to the Business Growth Grant. And as I said before, there's probably about 400 to 500 different industry types that fit under this category. So let's just go back. Advanced manufacturing, well, you know, that can cover a whole range of things, from mattress makers to car seat makers to clothing manufacturers. Food and agribusiness is covering all sorts of food business, but not the farmers themselves. strange as it may seem. So there are a lot of businesses in these categories. The turnover requirements for businesses around Australia in the main residential areas, 1.5 million minimum, maximum of 100 million. But for businesses in remote areas, and a new rule that was introduced last week for areas north of the Tropic of Capricorn. Now, the Tropic of Capricorn goes through Queensland, Northern Territory and the Western Australia, as you probably know, and it starts in Queensland at Rockhampton. So it's the areas north of Rockhampton only need a turnover now of $750,000 to be eligible to apply for this grant. Remote areas already includes all of Northern Territory, and the northern area of Western Australia is probably considered remote in any case, but now they're all eligible. And the grants can be up to $20,000 on a 50% grant basis. So that means up to $40,000 worth of work can be done, and a fair amount of that work can be done by accountants. Things like budgets, cash flow forecasts, business plans, strategic plans, human resources reviews, business management type advice. I've been the facilitator of a management group for 6 months, chairing their management meetings, making sure they all communicated to one another. There's a range of services can be offered under that heading. And basically any of the work or projects need to be undertaken to improve the company's performance. So as long as you can argue that it's the company's performance that's going to be involved, and it's going to improve that company's performance, you've got a real chance of being admitted. Now, in the first instance on the business growth grant, the business, your client, is interviewed by a contractor to the federal government who handles these applications. These people are people normally drawn from private enterprise who have got a contract with the government to deliver this program. They undertake a business review, a free business review, and come back with some very interesting reports. And part of that process is to identify the work that would be undertaken as part of the business growth grant process. So there's no formal application process as such. You need to have a discussion with one of the 93 people around Australia who deliver this program for the government through the entrepreneurship program. And their details are available on the government's website, which we have links to within the ES BIZGRANTS material. So how does ESS BIZGRANTS work? And we're going to go and show you the website to give you a more detailed overview in a moment. You enter some basic information about the client's business so that we can get a good idea of what your client's profile is all about. So the key thing is the corporate structure. Are they a company, a partnership, a trust, or whatever? Their turnover. I'm told I'm having problems on the audio, but the internet's a wonderful thing, isn't it? We can deliver these sort of programs, but every so often something goes wrong. So I hope you heard most of what I was talking about then, because I got told the audio had slipped out. We're back on air at present, so hopefully you can follow through. I've been saying the key things that you're looking for are the corporate structure, partnerships, company, trust. Some of those are only eligible for some grants. The most popular corporate entity is a company. I cannot think of a grant that is targeted at small, medium enterprises that a company is not eligible for, but there are plenty of instances where individuals and partnerships and trusts are not eligible for some grants. Turnover is important in grants, and we'll show you that in a moment. Employee numbers are important in some grants. Location, as you've just heard, there's special provisions for remote and very remote Australia, and now we've got special provisions for Northern Australia. In some grants, there's provision for assistance moving from a metropolitan area to an outer metropolitan area, which applies in the medical industry. So location is important. We ask questions as to whether the business exports, because there are some particular grants only for exporters. We ask a question whether the business is undertaking research and development, because that potentially might open up some other specific grants. We want to know the type of business, because the grants are tied to a business type, and I'll show you that in a moment. And that also brings in the industry. Now, these are the key bits of information that are required. And what we do in ESS BIZTOOLS, ESS BIZGRANTS, then is produces a list of possible grants in what we call a pending list. And this gives a very short summary of what that grant's about. And you can get some further information. And then on the grants that you identify that you think your client might be interested in, you can then be asked some additional questions, because what we're trying to do is to go down a flute and narrow it down. So at the end of the process, we're fairly confident that we can suggest to you in the report that that client could well be eligible for a particular grant. The client's still got to apply, of course, and they've got to go through the application process, and there could be all sorts of other reasons why, for some reason, a client's not admitted for a particular grant. Within the system, we have a toolkit, which is articles and papers and checklists that have been prepared by ESS BIZTOOLS on a particular grant that gives you some greater information on that grant. When we set this system up, we didn't set out for accountants to have to become grant experts, but if you want to read all the material, you will gather a lot of knowledge and become your own expert. It's there for you to glance through if you wish, but maybe you want to give it to the client so that they fully appreciate the grant that they're applying for. And depending on the answers that have been given to the specific questions, and if you answer them incorrect, it will indicate that you're potentially not eligible for that grant. It will then identify the grants that you are potentially eligible for. And once you get the potentially eligible grant list, you'll be able to produce a grant report. And our recommendation is then you sit down and have a discussion with your client, and you can then get their approval to start accessing individual application forms, and we supply the links to them. So you're getting the link to the website of the relevant government department onto the application form so you can look at it. So why would you use ESS BIZGRANTS? Well, we think it's part of the proactive services that accountants should be offering to their small, medium enterprise clients. The surveys conducted by David Smith have identified that SMEs are looking for information on grants. And it's a great way to show that you are being very proactive in looking after your clients' interests. And a very important point is that you're the project manager. You're in control of this. It's not, the inquiry is not going off to some faceless, nameless organisation somewhere that could well be associated with another organisation that prepares income tax returns or even offers business consulting services. And you could well find that through a grant application, your client is receiving overtures to switch their allegiances to another firm. This won't happen. You're in control. If as the project manager you want to refer your client to someone else, then you would be able to make inquiries and have discussions with that other organisation before doing so, and make sure you're not setting yourself up to lose your client. And it is a great entry into what could be substantial consulting fees. There's a lot of money that can be earned out of government grants. About $5 billion per annum is made available by the various levels of government in Australia for grants, incentives and special loans that all fall under this general heading. You can earn substantial fees, but are your clients earning the grants in the first place? And this is an ideal way to kickstart a business advisory service within your firm. And the government's paying 50% of the costs. Your clients like that idea. So that's the overview. What I'm going to do now is go on to the ESS BIZTOOLS, BIZGRANTS, website. If you have any questions, can you please type your question in and raise your hand? And a little bit later, I'll answer the questions. I have a couple in already. The first one is, I would be interested in using this to acquire new clients. Will the tools give us enough info about each grant to target specific business types? My suggestion is, if you take the approach that I'm about to show you, you will see how you can utilize this service to be able to identify the particular grants that might be applicable to any client, whether it's a new client or an established client. And I think the tools will give you enough information to target specific business types. And this is one of the things, if you find out that there's grants going to a specific industry by reading it in the newspaper, seeing it on the internet, or hearing rumors in your business community about a particular business that might not be one of your clients getting a grant, why don't you look at what industry they're in and then have a look at how many clients you've got in that industry. Then all you need to do is put one or two of them through ESS BizGrants, and you may well find that there are grants applicable to businesses in that industry classification. Then in a very proactive manner, you can approach your client and talk to them about the grants. We have another question that's in already. How difficult are the majority of the applications to complete? As experience with government grants has shown me that they are usually very lengthy and time consuming. And then there is no guarantee that you will get approval for the grant. Well, there's definitely no guarantee you're going to get approval other than for research and development. Research and development is just a matter of registering. There's no pre-application process. And it's probably the biggest component of that $5 billion that I mentioned before. But you need to make sure that you've got your I's dotted and your T's crossed, because there could be follow-up action by Oz Industry and or the Australian Taxation Office. The first contact should be made to you by Oz Industry. How difficult are the applications? Well, the application for accelerating commercialisation, which is a $1 million grant, is lengthy and complex. There's no doubt about that. Consultants charge anywhere between $7,000 and $15,000 to assist people in that grant application. As compared to the application for the business growth grant that we just went through, and I indicated that basically there's no application. There's just a contact made with the government's appointed business consultants, and that person will then make contact with your client and have a discussion with them. Now, you can influence those discussions to a certain extent by having a discussion with your client first and giving your client some idea of what you think they should be using the money for. And if the client agrees, of course, he or she could suggest that to the government's consultant. There's nothing wrong, as long as your client's happy, for you to attend the initial meeting with the government's business consultant to get an understanding of what's involved in the process. But there's no formal application form. There is a formal application form for disaster grants that every state government issues from time to time. They do require a bit more in the application process. And you'll need to work your way through those to get the answers. So I've gone onto the site now, and we are looking at what you get when you first go on. Now we're going to log in. When you go to the members home, there's just a summary of how you approach ESS BIZGRANTS. These are all test sites that we've used, and we'll just pick on XYZ Accountants, I think, and we'll go back. Oh no, that was just where we were. What we'll do is go back and actually enter in, I think is probably a better way of doing it. So when you are putting the entries in for a client, you need first of all to enter the name of the business, and we'll say this company's ESS Business Enterprises. Now you need to select the type of entity that applies, and you just click on whatever it is. If it was an individual, obviously this is a proprietary limited company, so we're saying company. Do you, there's some questions then, do you export? And we might say yes for this. This is a fabrication business. Do you import? We'll say yes, they do some importing. The number of employees, the company I've got in mind's got a $3 million turnover, employs 10 people. So the number of employees, we've gone through and ranked that, and if they've got 10 employees, they're in the 0 to 20 range. The other ranges are there because number of employees can be important in some grants. Do you have an ABN? The business will need an ABN to be able to apply for a grant. Number of years in business, this business has been going for 8 years, so it's going to be over 3, but we have the bands for some of the other years there that are mentioned in these various grants. The turnover I said was 3 million, so that's going to be in the band of 1.5 to 20 million. Are we registered for GST? Well, we need to be registered. We're not tax exempt, and we're doing a bit of research and development. And we'll say, we'll save. This business, we'll just make them put them in Townsville, where we are. They're in Queensland, because I meant to check on some other postcodes before and I forgot. So 4810, we save that information, and the system has identified when we put the 4810 postcode in, the Townsville's located in the outer regional areas of Australia. Then you need to enter the business industry code. You can enter if you know your client's code, you just enter it in the number. If you don't, you can put in a keyword. And I said they were a steel fabricator, so we'll put in steel. So we're going to select the category here, which is structured metal, product manufacturing. If there was some other products or services that they'd also done, you could click on those. I don't know what I did wrong then. So the system has now shown us the pending grants that we could be eligible for. And we're just going to pick a couple of these so you can see how it works. First one might be accelerating commercialisation. Now this is the major grant that this government has. So what you receive first of all is your summary of what's available. So you can look at that. You can look at funding. And the funding shows you that the grant can range up to $1 million on a 50% basis. If we click on the application toolkit, it will give you a link to the paper, which we've included in the system. On the grant, which you can read if you wish. And then we need to answer some additional criteria because we're trying to funnel down to work out whether this business is eligible for the grant. So has the applicant developed a novel product, process or service? We say they have. If the applicant is not a company, will the applicant agree? Well, we're already a company, so that's yes. Does the applicant have the ability to fund 50% of the project? So that's a very important question. And in this particular grant, the applicant needs to get an accountant's statement that you believe that. So we'll say yes. Can the applicant just justify the funding is required? Say yes. Does the applicant have the ownership or control of the intellectual property? Say yes. Because we answered all those questions correctly, and yes is not always the correct answer, apply now has now emerged, and that URL will take you through to the application form for accelerating commercialisation. If we close there, then the system will update the grant eligibility statement. We might just look at a couple of others of these potential grants. This business could be classified in a couple of different industries, so we'll have a look at the business growth grant. The system's now shown us something about the business growth grant, and that's the one that we've really been looking at today. This business could fit into advanced manufacturing. You can only apply for it under one heading. It's the same thing. We can go through the funding. You can get up to $20,000. We've got the toolkit whereby you can look at the papers, the additional criteria. We'll just answer a couple of these questions. Is the business able to pay debts when they're due? That's virtually a requirement of most government grants. Has the business been operating? Now, these ones have got to be operating for 3 years. The previous ones we looked at, that can be a brand new startup. This one has to be operating for 3 years. Has the applicant ever received a business growth grant or a tailored advisory service grant? That was the previous program. So we need to answer no if we're going to process this. Does the business provide high valued manufacturing goods and solutions, etc., etc.? We say yes. Apply now would just came up, and we can close. Now I'm not going to keep on going any further. We're going to go to the potentially eligible. We've got 2 grants. We'll print the report, but in actual practice you would continue to go through the rest of those prospects and decide whether you think your client fits that category. So what we have here now is the report that's been prepared. It has the name of the client, and it has your firm name, not ESS BIZTOOLS. That's just because we're the user of this site, but it would have your name there as the user. It's got the date, and it then has a profile on the grants that have been selected to go to for your client to review, together with the funding details. The disclaimer at the bottom is basically saying that the client's still got to go through the application process, and there could be reasons why they are rejected in the application process, just to cover both yourselves and ourselves in this type of product. So that's how the system works. You're then in a position to sit down and have a conversation with your client about the report that you've prepared. Our recommendation is that you could undertake this type of review at this time of the year if you have some of your accountants that are not fully occupied. Some people laugh at me when I say that, but I can remember when I was in practice that this time of the year there seemed to be some of the younger accountants were not fully occupied. Well, this is a great tool for them to start working on. Put the client profiles in, and perhaps you can start having some conversations with your clients to show you're very proactive, and then hopefully you're going to start earning some fees out of grant work. The other use of the system is probably more appropriate, and that is that the grant report is prepared by entering the data into the profile as you're completing the client's financial accounts for the year. In the first year, it will take you a bit longer than subsequent years because we are using cloud technology. So as long as you've left the profile in the system, next year all you've got to do is update it. So you're then able to produce a report like this for your client and indicate to them you've identified that they might be eligible for these grants, and suggest to them that you could handle the application process if they wish. Obviously it's the client's decision, and you would be indicating to the client that you would then be submitting a proposal to them and a basis of charging a fee to them, and we'd suggest that you establish a separate work in progress file so that you would record your costs separately and bill your client for this work. So that's how the grant report works and how we indicate that you have identified a grant or grants for clients that they might be interested in looking at. Now I've had another question in. We've noticed state grants and rebates don't come up. New South Wales app plan, JAP, why is that? Well, there's definitely state grants in there. I'll have a look and see if we've missed this one you're referring to and put them into the system. It's a bit difficult keeping up to date with state grants. Some of them come and go, but we are trying to do so, and we will build them into the system. I've got no further questions. I've answered a couple of the other ones that come in earlier. So thank you very much for participating in this webinar today. If you think of some questions later on, please contact us and we will get back to you. Thank you for your support of ESS BizGrants. Have a wonderful day. Goodbye.